Right. Good morning, early birds. Thanks for coming to my talk about event storming. And let's start this morning with kind of AI detox, all right? So I won't talk about any AI during this talk. And thank you. And I actually didn't use any AI when I was preparing this talk, at least consciously. So let me start what this talk is not about, okay? So this talk is not about how to become expert in event storming in 40 minutes, all right? I know this because actually I run training in event storming, domain-driven design, architecture, and other things. My name is Vadzim. I'm co-owner and instructor at TrainingTech, where we run those training. And in addition to that, I work as well as a hands-on architect at Apotek 1. Apotek 1 is the biggest pharmacy chain in Norway, by the way. And some facts about my private life. I came from Norway. I don't have, so much choice. So I have a family. I, of course, enjoy nature, skiing, fishing. I like playing the guitar and singing. So if AI takes my job, I will play the guitar in restaurants. That's my backup plan. I like working out. I love cars and making goodies for my family. And I'd like to do almost all of those things with my family. So let's move on, and my today's goal is to show how event storming can be useful for developers, because it's a developer conference. So let's take a look at it from the perspective of developers. However, if you are not a developer, it will be still useful for you, that's for sure. And I would like to inspire you, consider using event storming when you are back at work. So today's agenda is first to start with why it makes sense to consider event storming, because I don't want to jump to it and just explain how to do it. We need to understand a bit of context. Then we'll talk about most of the part about how to run it. Then it will be some additional questions about event storming that may pop up in your mind. And if we have time, I will tell you, in the end, two interesting real life stories about event storming. So let's start with the context. And now I know this is morning. I hope you have had coffee. But I need kind of interactions with you a bit. And I would like to just ask you a couple of questions. And the first question is how many of you agree that many people work on projects that they actually don't understand? Okay, I think it's almost the whole room of hands, which is kind of strange, right? We just work in this field. So why is it so? And one of the kind of main reasons is that we can be really proficient in our own job, yeah? For example, whether you're back-end developer, front-end, UX, and so on and so forth. However, we usually don't sometimes we don't care, or we don't just we are not able to see the overall a picture and have an overview. So why we are doing our job and things like that. And that's kind of a problem. The next one, which is a bit longer. Systems often contain wrong developers' assumptions about functions and dependencies rather than knowledge of domain experts. Who agrees? Okay, yeah, still a very, very many hands. So, and because of lack of time, lack of communication, lack of knowledge, we need to make decisions on our own, right? Or maybe with our neighbor colleague about what end users will like. Have you ever written user stories by yourself without asking what end users will like? Yes. Of course, everyone. So, and again, sounds kind of strange why we are doing that. And if you actually work in corporate environment, maybe you even don't know that those end users hate you. But you're so far from them, so you just don't care, right? And the last one, did you experience the following? One architect spends a lot of time on gathering requirements from different people and then assumes that developers will quickly understand what they will implement. Did you experience that? Maybe you were that architect. I was that architect. I thought I'm so smart. I can just talk to many people and then just collect all the knowledge in my head and then somehow just quickly explain it to developers what they will do and come with initial software design. I was so mistaken, but you know. And what can happen with this architect? This architect may disappear. And what will the next architect do? Tell me. Probably the same. Yes? By the way, I was that architect, so it was one really nice and smart guy, so I can't say anything bad about him, but he spent like 8-9 months on talking to people, making notes, writing documentation, and then he quit. And then after that, I had like 2-3 months, just do the same work. Just understand what was that on documentation, on those diagrams, and things like that. So it was really, really hard job. Okay, so, but what can help? We, first of all, need to discover implicit dependencies, like market trends, end-user behavior, something that is maybe not statically typed in our code base and things like that. So it's kind of important to discover those implicit dependencies. We need to transfer the knowledge and be transparent. I won't just spend much time on it. I think it's just already like kind of obvious for you that knowledge transfer is important. Discover the most important events and problems, especially before we write the code, like bottlenecks, legal restrictions, GDPR rules, and so on and so forth. Because if you have already written a lot of code, and then you realize that we are actually not compliant with something that we could know in the beginning, then we have a problem. Solving business problems rather than blindly implementing requirements. Again, if you're in corporate world, so probably you have experienced things like that, like someone from business knows how you will implement something. So they just use a system, they come to you, and instead of talking about their challenges, they start talking about, I need a button, you will press this button, you will import Excel sheet, and then we will process this data in this and that way, and then it will be presented to us in another way. Yeah? So they just come with requirements, with solutions to you, instead of talking about their problems and challenges. So whenever I just hear this word, like this is our requirement, then just some red flag just pop-ups in my mind. Okay, we need to talk about like something else, about okay, what is your challenge, instead of give me your requirements. So all right, so maybe some of you think now, okay, so it's too abstract or maybe too obvious. Could you please, Vadzim, be a bit closer to the code? We are developers, right? So let me try. And now imagine, what if you had the name of the classes you will implement in your code base? Now, what if you had the APIs, future APIs, like a REST API, or maybe some asynchronous ones, or maybe some APIs like a public method in your domain classes? So let's imagine you had them. What if you had knowledge about users and their roles who will be using your system? What if you had knowledge about some UX decision for your system? What if you have knowledge about some policies or like important domain rules that you will implement in your system? And what if you had knowledge about the events, especially if you're implementing event-driven architecture, about the events that you will implement in your system? What if you had knowledge about systems, external systems you will integrate with? What if you had knowledge about some problems or questions nobody has answers to in the very beginning? And you have like clusters of those things, and you can group them together to bounded context. And if you are not familiar with domain-driven design, it can, to some approximation, mean your future services. Wouldn't it be nice to have it before you start coding? Who would like to have it before you start coding? Everyone, exactly. I would love to have it before we start coding. And let's imagine that this can be done in hours. Sounds fishy, right? Because usually we sit in those long meetings many times, maybe during like weeks or months, discussing something and still not having knowledge about an overview about the whole system. Sounds kind of strange. How can it be done in hours? All right? And if you don't have it like before you start coding, and then you have already implemented some part of your project, and then you realize that it was a big mistake, is it easy to go back? It's not that easy, because sometimes a manager can tell you one like nice phrase, sorry, we can't stop the train. We can't stop the train. For political reasons, for example, we have used budget, part of the budget. So we can't just go back and start from scratch. Continue. And maybe we will rewrite your rewrite in some years. So now let's understand EventStorming a bit better, because this is a result of EventStorming which can be done in hours. So first of all, what is EventStorming? First of all, it's a workshop where we can bring together all the interested parties, developers, business experts, QA, UX, and all of those people. And we run massive collaborative exploration of some complex problems. And as I said, it runs for hours instead of days, weeks, or months, sitting in those long meetings. Some examples, real-life examples. Those are not AI generated. You have to believe me, you can't verify. Those are real people. Having fun, working together, and in hours solving and coming to initial system architecture design. So, why EventStorming? First of all, it's faster and more enjoyable than traditional methods. You know, like you're sitting in the meetings, you're just doing your own things, and then you hear your name, like yes, Vadzim? Sorry, could you please repeat? Do you recall this? Helps developers and business people get to know each other. Like before I ran EventStorming in my company, I knew just a few representatives from the business. Now I know like a lot of people. Helps find a common language between developers and business people. Could you please tell me what is this common language in domain-driven design? Yes? It's a ubiquitous language, yes, ubiquitous language. Helps discover important questions before writing the code, so I can just repeat it many times like mantra. And helps to get a strategic design, so define boundaries and their dependencies. And this is what architects usually need before we go and implement the system, because we need to, let's say, have some upfront design. Okay, now let's go and see how to run EventStorming. And the first phase is invitation. So we don't meet and run and start running it. First of all, we need to think a lot about whom to invite. And sometimes people miss this point, and yeah, the EventStorming session doesn't go so good. So basically, we need to find like two groups of people. First of all, there should be a group who has questions, and another one who has answers. So developers, testers, other people, they usually have questions, and business domain experts, and then end users, they have answers. If you have only one group, like developers, you will have fun, and you will end up with assumptions that I've showed you before, right? A lot of assumptions, what user will like, and you know, you will be just live in illusion about your future architecture. Some of them won't show up, therefore think about backups. We have families, people can get sick, and if you have an important person who knows about a certain part, and this person, for example, gets sick, then as well, even storming session won't be run so good because, you know, like some part will be just blurry. They should be clear who will be a facilitator as well. Like a role of facilitator just includes a couple of things, like you need to prepare to the workshop, explain what to do, set some frames, just manage long conversations, things like that. And last but not least, being full of energy. Okay, so if you're really like a real introvert, hating people, like working at home alone, then you should probably work on your skills if you want to run first event storming session. And you should give the context to the audience. For example, whether we will explore the system as is or the system in the future from this part to this part, so people should clearly understand what they will work on. The second one is the room setup. Couple of rules, like a long straight wall. At least it should be like a minimum 8 meters, like ideally, and it there should be a wall without any interruptions. I remember one client, and she told us, "Oh, we have this like a long straight wall," and you know, I always double check, so I asked her, "Could you please send me a video of your room?" And yeah, it was actually a long straight wall. However, it was like a wall, window, wall, window, and wall. And she told me, "Yeah, but you can run EventStorming here, then you just skip the window and you continue." Of course not. There shouldn't be any interruptions on the wall. But it was funny. I just didn't expect that. Yeah, you should double check. Seats are not easily available, so which means that people shouldn't just, you know, come. Oh, I have a chair, nice. So they just don't like sit and do like things like that. Okay, showing everyone, because you know the next step. What will be the next step for those people? Taking their mobile phones from the pocket and just doing their own things. Okay, so everybody, if they are able, should stand and work together. Enough space to move. It should be just comfortable for people, just to move, you know, and work on the wall. Plenty of sticky notes and markers for everyone. There shouldn't be any shortage of them. Enough healthy food and beverages so people can get like a thirsty, so there should be like quick access to those things. A flip chart or anything else as a legend, just to show, okay, so those are our main elements, different like a sticky note, different colors, so people just will be able to check. And timer visible to everyone. So you can use some digital timers like on the screens. You can use this one like I have, for example, on my phone. Just people need to be able to see it and understand that all the faces are time boxed. Okay, and now we run to the first step of big picture event storming, where we get like a notion of big picture, understanding of our system, of our process. And the first step is to find domain events. So what is domain event? Domain event is basically facts that happen in our system, okay, or in our process. And domain events have just a couple of rules. So first of all, they are presented in a past tense, which means that it should be used in the past tense, like a dispute closed, dispute opened, member registered. So they should be past tense because they are facts. And another one, you should keep some margin from in the start and the end of the board, because maybe after that, maybe some events can as well appear, and you won't be like bothered by moving events like to the one or another direction. So like those orange sticky notes. And why is it useful? So it's a first step to find the common vocabulary. So basically the main idea of those domain events, so everything that sits in your head, you just take it and throw it on the board, okay? So just take it and throw it. Just it should be empty after some minutes, okay? That's the main idea. Everyone's knowledge starts to be visible to others, so maybe you will see some unexpected things. So you may be thinking about users, and another person thinks about members. Okay, so something maybe to learn and to agree on. Most of the events will be events in your code. That is nice as well for developers. Okay, so now we'll have events. And one tip, write domain events so others can read. For example, I'm not sure if you can read it, so this is something like probably you can read, right? But if someone just comes and, writes something like this, so, I had just experience asking people, could you please tell me who wrote this event? And the answer is silence. Even the person who wrote this event, they couldn't recognize what was there. Okay, next one. So that was a pure chaotic exploration. We have events in our board. Now we need to make order of it. Okay, so we need to order them according to the time. And we can employ different strategies, and I will just share like a couple of them today, but there are more. So first of all, we can use so-called pivotal events. So pivotal events are those events that are most important in your process. Some events that are hard, for example, to recover from or go back from. For example, like a dispute close. So when dispute is closed, so it's closed, okay? So you can't just go back and reopen it. So you need to open a new one. It can be a good, let's say, example of a pivotal event. And you can as well use some swim lanes. Some process can go in parallel. So you can represent some process like above the other and just save some space. Because even if you have this like a long wall, it's still limited space. So you need to think about how you will utilize your space. Why is it useful? Pivotal events can help you identify future service boundaries. It doesn't mean that it will just show you that, yes, this is your service boundary. But for sure, they will give you some heuristics about your future service boundaries. And understanding of the system gets better. Many questions arise because people work together. There's some discussions, and some of them cannot be answered and turn to hotspots. I'll show you hotspots just in a second what it means. One tip, work in dynamic groups. So although domain experts can work at the same parts of the system between, let's say, pivotal events, however, developers and people who have questions should be moved, okay? So just don't, let's say, as a facilitator, don't send them to work in the same group all the time. Just move them around, mix and match. And the hotspots basically represent just unclear topics or questions that cannot be easily resolved just at the very moment. Okay, which means that instead of spending a lot of time on discussing one single event, as a facilitator, you should politely interrupt, okay, and turn it like to a hotspot. Let's just write hotspots, something just is unclear, and then we can get to it back. But now we continue because you don't have choice. Otherwise, you will just drain your time and drain the energy of the people. The next step is actors and systems. So basically, we will find users. Yeah, I just forgot to show you those hotspots, okay? And those are like a mini sticky notes for actors. So you need to identify basically users or roles who will use your system and attach them to the event. So some events can be automatic. Some events can be driven by real people. So that's why we need to find out who will use system and in which way. And one more thing is external systems. Do I have external systems? Yes, I have. So external systems of those, is it like a pink? I think it's pink. I'm not sure. Yeah, it doesn't matter like which colors actually you use. There are no hard rules. But yeah, and why do we need those external systems? Basically, those are your future integrations you will implement. Is it important to know about your future integrations? It's very important. Sometimes it can take months. because you're dependent on another team, maybe an integration team in your company, and they have their own backlog. Yeah, it's very important to know about your future integrations. So when you just, add more of those sticky notes, you will get more knowledge about who will use the system, about your future integrations, and unfortunately or fortunately, I think it will just lead to even more hotspots, so-called like unanswered questions, which is good because you know it in the beginning, right? One tip, don't force participants to draw humans. So if you read the book about EventStorming, you will find like suggestions about, okay, so you can draw some like actor, then actor in a crown, it will be administrator. Just believe me, after like, if someone doesn't have good drawing skills and they need to draw like 20 humans, they will hate you for sure. Or those humans will look like like a mad humans. So instead of it, just use like circles and just letters. Okay, this is administrator, for example. It will be easy for people to write. Why should you draw all of those characters? Okay, so the next step is explicit walkthrough problems and opportunities. Just imagine you worked in groups, and but there was something between those groups, right? Between those events. Probably there are some gaps not filled with events or any additional knowledge. This is the first thing. The second thing, some people were working in, let's say, group number 1 and group number 2, but never in group number 3. But maybe they will have questions for group number 3, but they didn't have a chance just to ask those questions or show their opinions. Okay, and we will need to kind of to check the truthfulness of the whole story. That's why the group will finally sit, and we will take like 1 or 2 narrators who will go and tell you the whole story from the beginning to the end. And you should watch out and ask questions if something is unclear. Just please don't just sit and nod like all the time, because narrators, they usually have like they usually like a jumping between events, like a cheating a bit. But as a facilitator especially, you should catch those moments and fill the gaps. That's important. That's important. So yeah, and more hotspots will be there. And I didn't show you like one more sticky note, which is opportunity, just which can be edited at any phase. Basically, it represents something like a valuable in your process, or it can as well represent something. Let's say it can be attached to the event with some thoughts of how this event could happen earlier. For example, you have an event like something purchased, like a product purchased, right? And you have an idea of how this event could happen actually early, because for your business it's kind of valuable, right? That product purchase just goes a bit earlier, and then you can as well turn it to opportunity. If you have many of those, like hotspots and opportunities, you need to have some backlog. Okay, where to start? Which opportunity or which hotspot to discuss first? And you can run like a voting using those like even smaller sticky notes, and people can just vote on different hotspots, and then you have a clear backlog. Okay, so these hotspots got the most votes, then we should start with this one. Okay, so why is it useful, this step? The whole group can verify the truthfulness, which is very important. Common understanding becomes even better. So now people will see the whole process from the start to the end. And fortunately, there will be more like domain events, hotspots, and opportunities, because you will actually fill the gaps. So this step is very important, shouldn't be skipped. One tip, you should change the narrator if necessary, because if this session lasts for like 1.5 hours, just assigning one people for talking for 1.5 hours can be really tiresome. That's why just try to change the narrators and choose different domain experts, so they will just take over. And with all of that, we can say that big picture event storming done. And there are some useful tips about this big picture when you have understanding of the of your process or system, like on an overall scale. All the phases should be time boxed. Many people just failed running event storming because they just allowed people discussing one single node for 10 minutes. Okay, and then, oh, we don't have time, or oh, everybody's tired and we have just run we are done with ordering of the events. We have already used 3 hours. Nobody wants just to work after that. Not all domain events will with the same text are duplicates, because when you order events, you will for sure remove some duplicates. However, sometimes it's nice to just to ask a person what they mean by that event. So even if you see like a user and user, sometimes it doesn't mean that it's just the same event. Long conversations should politely interrupt and replaced by hotspots. Just I explained that, right? So like there shouldn't be any long conversations. Avoid using technical terms. So if you're a developer and you start talking about, oh, this will be our future aggregate route. Oh, it's a sign for bounded context. You know what's happening with those domain experts? All right, just continue, guys. I won't participate any longer. Prepare for personal issues. Long discussions, a person dominating others. There are sometimes there's a person who thinks he or she knows everything better than others and just tries to teach everyone how it has to be. Yeah, again, it's kind of a job for facilitator. I like to say like one phrase like everybody has right to be wrong. Okay, so let's create a hotspot if you don't agree. And discuss only visible things. Just don't take some personal notes. So when I see people like opening their notebooks and just starting writing something, it means that this knowledge is not visible anymore to anyone. So all the knowledge about our session should be visible on the board. That's the thing. You should as well watch out such issues. So before going further to the next step, it's important to resolve the most important hotspots, because if you have really like a hotspot with many votes, you know, it can be hard to proceed, because one hotspot may influence the picture quite a lot. So you should resolve them. The next step is to finding bounded contexts. Okay, so future services of our software systems. So, it's like a more technical meeting, I would say, and you need to explore like a vocabulary, roles, related business scenarios. Just there are some tips and tricks. Unfortunately, we just don't have time during this session. It just takes like 30 minutes to explain all of those tricks. Yeah, I would love to do it. Just need to limit myself, really force myself to speak a bit shorter about it. So. But employing all of those rules can lead to finding your future bounded context, and just imagine that it happens after a couple of hours. Strange, right? Because just this work should take more time, right? It should take months. Exactly. So why is it useful? You understand what services you will have, just as simple as it is. And one tip, sometimes actually it's fine to invite domain experts to this part and get help from them. I was really surprised that I was in my company, it took me 5 minutes to explain what context is. I didn't say word bounded, I used just context, and they just got it and helped me and the team identify bounded context. So sometimes it just works fine. Process modeling, a step further. Basically, you don't need to keep the whole group. Now you're focused on a specific part, maybe within a bounded context, and then you get you work in smaller groups and try to just go deep dive and add more elements and show like basically model a process towards like a more specific technical solution. So we get there like a couple of more elements. So the first one is like a command, which represents an intention, like accept resolution, decline resolution, which means that we usually use verbs in an imperative form. Okay, those are commands. Remember your future APIs. One more thing is that we have policies, and policies, those are purple sticky notes, which means that policy represents an important business rule. Okay, so you will implement most probably in your code because it's important business rules. Is it important to know about important business rules? Rhetorical question, yes? Okay, and the last one is like a read model. So what is read model? Read model is basically something related to like a more UX, like what a person, let's say, needs to have in front of like a screen, on their screen, in order to make a decision, to run a command. And for example, let's say we have some dispute resolution and a user needs to know about orders, about the order, about messages between buyer and seller, about like a proposed resolution, things like that. So this information should be presented to the end user. And why is this important? Like a UX part for developers, for example, for UX people, of course, it's very important. Why is it important for developers? So again, it can be like a hint for using some patterns like a CQRS. If you see that, okay, I'm in a dispute context, and I need to know about orders, messages. I don't have this data in my dispute context, right? So probably I need to fetch it somehow. Maybe I need to I will react to some important events, and I will implement some CQRS pattern and then collect this data in my dispute service, okay? So this can be as well useful. So commands heavily contribute to your future API design. Read models help with UI-related decisions, and policies may turn to important domain logic in your code. Tip: don't wait for process modeling if you discover policy earlier. So it shouldn't be like you hear some important business rules when you order events, and you just, for example, your facilitator, someone tells you, oh, I found some, important information, and you as a facilitator, your response is, no, wait. We are waiting for process modeling session. Keep this in your mind, and then we will use it. No, you just immediately, okay, so we have another color for this. Let's just write it down and stick it to the board. Now, main elements of event storming. So if you read the book, you will see this, okay, those are main elements. And I would like to point to like one, let's say, challenge with this picture, because we were struggling when we were running those event storming sessions. So over here, you can see the domain event activates policy, okay? Which means that, for example, you have some command, let's say, cancel booking, okay? And of course, before you can cancel booking, probably there are some important business rules. You can't just cancel it, right? So there should be some important business rules. And people kind of a bit, struggle with that, because it says that domain event activates policy, not command, but domain event. And like a cheating option here is to, let's say, create an artificial event, like a booking cancellation requested, and then it will activate a policy. And it was just, for us, it just caused like, almost always it just caused confusion, like why should I have this like an artificial event, like this is requested, something is requested. So probably policy can as well validate my command, right? So this is our like a view on this, which is a bit more complicated, which means that we just added that command can be validated by policy. So I post a command like cancel booking, and then I have a policy. about cancellation because maybe I will reject this comment. So this is like our way of doing this. I don't mind if you're okay with this one. So it's just up to you. This is something like a work in practice for us. Now, important note about the sequence of phases. So should we always run big picture, event storming, process modeling, bounded context, all of those phases? My answer is no. So first of all, you should need to understand whether you actually need a big picture. Because maybe people have this big picture and they just need to go deeper from the start. And you can start with process modeling. You should just start with commands, like all of those elements that I presented before, but you just start with them and it's just, it's just fine. You don't need a big picture. However, if you need it, then you run it and then you have one more decision, like, is it our system actually so big? And do we have enough space on the board? So if we have enough space on the board and our system is small, so probably like a finding bounded context session just doesn't make sense. You just jump straight to the process modeling. This is the technical meeting. The last step is discovering aggregates. So aggregates are the most important classes in our domain model. So again, we use vocabulary, related events, life cycles, just trying to find out those main classes. And we use this light yellow sticky note for that. So aggregates are the most important classes in your domain model. And one tip, you should avoid identifying too big aggregates. Do this like a lazy job. Like, okay, we have this bounded context, everything is about disputes, then it will be dispute, done. Like 5 seconds, done, aggregate. Just, not so fast, all right? Because maybe in your case, if I go back a bit, maybe some events will be like all around, like working with dispute, and maybe you will have as well some reporting system or something like that, and maybe for this you need one more like a smaller aggregate, which is reported dispute or something like that, okay? So try to find fine-grained aggregate. You will have less code per aggregate, and they will be just responsible for very focused use cases, instead of just to take like a broader responsibility of everything that may happen with your disputes. That's it. However, you may still have the following questions. I will try to predict what questions you have in your minds. Will EventStorming give you 100% accurate solution? Because we are engineers, right? We want just to have some solution that they just works. We can just go and copy it to code. So not always, because every event storming is not a golden hammer. Just don't put too high expectations that you will just end up with 100% accurate system design. However, it's an affordable, good hammer, so it's just worth using it because it just takes hours. And anyways, when you leave the room, you will end up with much more knowledge and alignment with the whole group. Does EventStorming work only for new projects? EventStorming can also help understand the current system and processes. So if you have a system you need to rewrite, run EventStorming. If you have a process and not everybody understands why we have those processes, again, run EventStorming. For example, in our company, we had a process of development and a development and release process, and we actually met, and we ended up with 20 hotspots. 20. You can just imagine, people just had so different opinions about how we should release our software. So 20. Is EventStorming about any hard rules? Not at all. Feel free to add read models during explicit walkthrough phase, for example. Use different colors. I have this one of my clients has like always joking with me like, Vadim, could you please take those proper orange sticky notes, otherwise our session just will fail. So if you have other color like yellow, it's okay. Just use what you have. And the facilitator, as a facilitator, you create an illusion that everything is under control, however it's not. So in the beginning, you don't know what will happen. It's an empty board, just a lot of people, okay, so maybe 10 people, 15 people, they just start just doing something, working the groups, just discussing, you don't know what will happen. But however, they have kind of illusion that that you control everything, and they have like some rules, some frames, and everything just going as it should be. What if I need to remember additional info? Like, I have different sticky notes, but I need to remember something like something that I would probably document. I need this information. So you can use the board or big sticky notes or big like a paper sheet, for example, and just write it down on it and just stick it, okay? Just the main idea is that you shouldn't just keep everything in your mind, because every person, we just live with our own illusions, and then this information may change in our minds, and then we will transfer it in like a different way. So it's better just to write it down. How to run EventStorming in my company? So the context is different in every company, and sometimes you get like a more trust from your managers, sometimes less trust. So I don't have, unfortunately, like a good recipe. However, I have like a very good suggestion is to start small. Try to find some very small system, maybe internal one, and then you practice. Because if you start with the bigger one, as a facilitator, most probably it will be really, really challenging for you. Even like a worse, if people will like will get a bad feeling about this event storming, then you will miss the trust and they will never come to your session again. So start small. I did it myself, chose very small system, and I learned a lot like on the very first step. When to stop event storming? Stop when the value of additional sessions diminishes. Okay, so that's the important thing. So you shouldn't run it like all the time, and you shouldn't run all the steps, because for me, like, EventStorming is a tool, not a religion. So don't just be like like a dogmatic that we should run all of those phases in order, use all the colors. You can't just add the sticky note with another color and things like that. So we should run process modeling like it's written in this book. Just like be very pragmatic. So it's just a tool in your toolbox. It's not kind of a religion. It should help us, not just create some limitations. Can I run EventStorming online? Yeah, if you're distributed teams, can you run it online? Yes, you can run it online. However, there are some caveats, and probably I should have another talk about how to run EventStorming online, since like you have some technical challenges like microphones, cameras. Yes, you have distractions at multitasking. Like we kind of run EventStorming. However, for whatever reason, the face of that person looks like so. Okay, so just again. Interpersonal interactions as well, like when you stand with someone else, you see the whole like body language. When you see only this part, then it can be kind of challenging to see what actually that person means. So you don't see any like a body language and things like that. So it's just, yeah, it has some like a challenges. It's a like a separate will be separate talk, I think, maybe next one. But what's next after EventStorming? So we are done with EventStorming. So we got some knowledge about, okay, big picture, process modeling. So what to do next? You can digitize it. You can like just take a photo. This is the first step. You should take a photo, definitely. Then you can just, wrap the paper. You can transfer it as well to Miro board. It will take a couple of hours, but it's kind of fine because then you can just keep. One time I ran like a hybrid session. For example, we ran EventStorming big picture, but voting was on Miro board. So it was digitized, and then I asked people, okay, so those are your votes. Could you please just drag them and place on the hotspot you think it's important? Yeah. Okay, it should be documented in a place accessible to the team, not only architects, and plan technical related work. Then you start with system architecture, backlog, etc. And I hope you feel like it's just much comfortable when we have this like a knowledge before you actually go to the code, touch your keyboard. Exactly. Do you have time? Yeah, we have time. I can just tell you a couple of stories. So the very real quick. So the first one about EventStorming was that I started small with that like a small system, and we thought like, okay, so let's run EventStorming. Let's just learn something about EventStorming, not about the system. And to our surprise, for that like a small system, we ended up with 10 hotspots. So domain expert couldn't answer 10 questions. 10, okay? And as well, one person got an idea, but do we really need this like a part of functionality? And the conclusion was like, oh, we actually don't need it. So the context has changed, we don't need it. So after 2.5 hours, we understood that we need like more discussions and more decisions first. Second, we will have less scope. 2.5 hours. Okay, okay. So there was 2 stories. The second one, it was a bigger system, like maybe 18 people in the room. We ran EventStorming, and then we ended up like one part was kind of blurry. All right, let's maybe just meet in a bit like a smaller group, 1 hour after that, and again it was one part. It was blurry. One part was blurry, and I thought like, okay, oh my gosh, I'm a bad facilitator. I'm going to fail EventStorming. Okay, let's just meet one more time. So we met one more time, and then we got an idea that actually we don't need to implement this part at all because it can be taken over by 2 other systems. So the conclusion was to abandon the project. What a nice conclusion, right? Isn't it? Abandon the project. So instead of sending like 2 consultants working for 2-3 months on something that we will eventually realize we don't need. Maybe it's not a good conclusion for consultants, but for our company it was a really nice conclusion to abandon the project. So, conclusions of our talk. First of all, EventStorming is a tool for exploration of complex domains and processes. First of all, it's a tool, not dogma. Exploration, when we need to learn, and complex, okay? Next one, we can call EventStorming the most effective meeting. I don't know any more effective meeting than EventStorming. It's just a meeting, but where like many brains work together in the same room at the same time. That's why you get this result in hours. Start small if you decide to use it. If you just read the book, watch some videos, is not enough. You need to really learn how to become a facilitator, and it's not that kind of, let's say, complicated, but there are always small tricks you can adjust and make it better and better. Don't try to be precise. I know we are engineers, we would like to be precise, our code is precise, but we need to focus rather on learning. Even if something is still like unknown, it doesn't mean that it just went bad, the session, because just focus on what you have learned, okay? So focus on learning. And EventStorming is the best starting point we can get. In hours. Thank you very much. Presentation slides are there. And yeah, if you want to get in touch, so you can as well scan the QR code. Thank you. If you have any questions, just come to me. We can discuss. I like discussions.